Hi all, welcome to the second day of factoring. You should have out your notes or a piece of paper so that you can follow along with me. Before we do any examples, I want to look at the types of factoring that we have done so far. In the first video, you factored out the greatest common factor, you factored product sum trinomials, and then you also did split the middle. So you did those first three types of factoring. This video is going to focus on some more product sum split the middle, and then factor by grouping. So that's a new type that we haven't done yet this year. We have 4 examples that we're going to do together, and then you have 2 that you're going to do on your own. Here's the first example we're doing. As a reminder, you should be factoring without the use of a calculator. So this is split the middle. First thing we want to look, is there a greatest common factor? So is there anything that will factor into all 3 terms? At this point, there's no number that will go into 2, -7, and -4 besides 1 or -1. Next, I want to multiply 2 and -4, I get -8. I'm looking for 2 numbers whose product is -8, so 2 numbers that multiply to -8, and whose sum is -7, so 2 numbers that add to be -7. Those numbers are going to be -8 and +1. This is called split the middle because we want to rewrite this middle term. So I keep the 2x squared. Instead of -7x, I'm going to write -8x, add 1x, and then keep that -4. So all we did was rewrite -7x as -8x and +1x. Now I'm going to put my line down the middle so that I can factor the left side and factor the right side. Greatest common factor of 2x squared and -8x is going to be 2x. I'm then left with x subtract 4. Right side, the greatest common factor of 1x and -4 is just a +1. I'm then left with x subtract 4 again. At this point, I want to do a check and see, am I on the right track? My 2 sets of parentheses match, so I know that I'm on the right track. Last step to factoring is rewriting that x subtract 4. Second set of parentheses is what's outside, so this 2x add 1. And this is my final factored form. So that was a quick review of split the middle. Now we're going to go on to factor by grouping. Here's the first example that we have. You will notice that we already have 2 factored terms. Please do not multiply these out. So do not distribute that 3x and that 5. I have 2 sets of parentheses that match. So I'm going to factor those out, x subtract 1. Second set of parentheses is what's outside, this 3x add 5. That's it. That's your final answer. Here's our next example. So this one's a little bit different than what we've done before because we have 4 terms. First thing I want to do, put a line down the middle. So I'm going to group those first 2 terms together and group the second 2 terms together. That's why it's called factor by grouping. First thing I'm going to look for is the GCF on the left side. So greatest common factor of these 2 terms. The GCF of 8 and 10 is going to be 2, and then both terms have an x squared. 8 divided by 2 is 4. X cubed, factor out an x squared, you're left with an x, and then you still have that y. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and then we already took out the x squared. Now looking to the right side. I want to find the greatest common factor of -4xy and -5. All I can factor out is a -1. -4xy becomes +4xy. And -5 becomes a +5 when you factor out that -1. Now again, I want to do my check and say, am I on the right track? I notice that my 2 sets of parentheses match. So I'm going to rewrite those, 4xy add 5. And then my second set of parentheses is what's outside. So 2x squared subtract 1. And that is my final factored form. We have 1 more example together, and then you all have 2 that you're going to try on your own. Okay, this one looks a little different. It kind of looks like example 2 where we have those 2 sets of parentheses, but the issue that we're running into here is these 2 sets of parentheses do not match. They're close though. I go from +x to -x, -5 to +5. So they have the same numbers, but the wrong signs. So I need to think, what can I do to negative x to make it a positive x? What can I do to positive 5 to make it a negative 5? I'm going to factor out a negative 1 from that second set of parentheses. So rewrite your first set of parentheses. That one I'm not changing at all. Now I'm going to factor out a negative 1. So keep that 3. When I factor out the negative 1, negative x becomes positive x. Positive 5 becomes a negative 5. I'm going to simplify this a little bit. Keep your first set of parentheses the same. Here, 3 multiplied by negative 1 is negative 3. And then I still have that x subtract 5. At this point, it's looking a little more like what we're used to. 2 sets of parentheses match. So I'm going to rewrite those as x subtract 5. And then second set is what's outside again. So this 4y subtract 3. And this is my final answer. Here are the 2 examples you have on your own. There's one split the middle and one factor by grouping. If you right now would please pause the video, take 2 minutes to try each problem, and then come back and I will show you how to solve or how to factor. Welcome back. Hopefully you've tried these 2. Now we're going to go over them together. First one, there's no greatest common factor of 6x squared, 7x, and negative 3. Or the greatest common factor is 1. So now I'm going to multiply 6 and negative 3, I get negative 18. So what are the 2 numbers that multiply to negative 18 and add to be positive 7? It's positive 9 and negative 2. So I have 6x squared, add 9x, subtract 2x, subtract 3. So all I've done is rewrite this 7x as 9x subtract 2x. Now, line down the middle. Out of the left side, I'm going to factor out a 3x. And I have 2x add 3. Out of the right side, I'm going to factor out a negative 1. And I have 2x add 3. Do our check. 2 sets of parentheses match, so I can move on. Final factored form becomes 2x add 3, and then 3x subtract 1. Looking to our second example, we notice again the parentheses do not match. So I'm going to factor a negative 1 out of that second set of parentheses. First set stays the same. When I factor out a negative 1, the parentheses becomes y subtract 1. I'm going to simplify a little so that I don't have that positive 12 and negative 1. 12 multiplied by negative 1 is negative 12, and then y subtract 1. Now I notice my 2 sets of parentheses match, so I'm going to rewrite those. Second set of parentheses becomes the 13y squared subtract 12. And this is the final factored form. Hopefully those 2 went well for you. Just a quick look back at the different factoring types we've now done. Now you know how to factor out the greatest common factor. You know how to factor product sum trinomials. You know how to factor product sum split in the middle trinomials. So that was the first example we did today. And then you know how to factor by grouping. So that's when you have the 4 terms. When you come into class tomorrow, we will be working on an in-class worksheet.